Plan Commission meeting of Tuesday, January 18th, 2022.
Gonna help us.
Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, before we take roll, I want to just thank Josh Fedor for his service to the Plan Commission. We're trying to figure out how many years, but we're not sure, but it's between 5 and 10, we think. So appreciate his efforts. With that, let's take roll.
Mr. Franz?
Present.
Mrs. Grabanowski?
Present.
Mr. Jones?
Present.
Mrs. Walker? Present. Mr. Lake?
Present.
Ms. Madrick?
Present.
All right, with that, we've got six members, so we have a quorum. We need to elect officers. So are there any nominations for president?
I'd nominate Dave Franz.
Are there any other nominations? If there are none, is there a vote?
I'll second the nomination.
We found out it doesn't need to be seconded.
We don't?
Yeah,
Okay,
so-
well, I wanted to make sure it was legal.
Okay,
I move we elect by acclamation.
is there a second to that motion?
Second.
All right, all in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay. Thank you very much. I'll keep serving. We need a vice president. Is there a nomination for the vice president?
I'll nominate Chris Lake.
So Chris Lake's been nominated. Is there any other nominations? If there are none, should we have a vote or a motion by acclamation?
I move we elect by acclamation.
Or second?
Second.
All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed by nay. Chris, your vice president, thank you very much. We also need to appoint a member to the BZA. In the past, that's been Larry. Would you serve again?
Yes.
And that takes a vote also. All right, so is there a motion to appoint Larry by acclamation?
So moved. So moved.
Second? I didn't get to say, well, Mary. Oh, Mary, I thought you said, sorry. All right, all in favor, signify by aye.
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 Opposed by nay? Larry, thank you very much.
Mhm.
Yep. We also need to name a secretary. In the past, that's been Wayne. Is there a motion to, or is there a nomination for secretary?
Nominate Wayne DeLong.
Are there any other nominations? Being none, is there a motion to appoint Wayne by acclamation?
Moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay. Wayne, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
sir.
In your packet, there was a set of minutes from the December 20th, 2021 meeting. Are there any comments, changes, additions to those minutes? If there are none, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay. Motion carries. Minutes are approved. On to continued business. Docket number 2021-53 MP, A Bristol, 415 North, 1100 East, Zionsville, Indiana. Petition for minor plat approval to establish a 3-lot residential subdivision in the rural AG agricultural zoning district. Is the petitioner present?
Thank you, Mr. President. For the record, Mike Andrioli, 1393 West Oak Street here in Zionsville, representing Mr. Adam Bristol, who owns the property. We are seeking a 3-lot minor plat subdivision tonight with 2 plat waivers, one for the 800-foot cul-de-sac requirement and the other for the water facility requirement, given the fact that these are going to be on wells. We have driven test wells. There's plenty of potable water out there. It's next to the Finley Creek watershed. So of all of the concerns, that's probably the least of the three concerns. There is a house on the property now built in the mid 2005-06 timeframe that Mr. Bristol currently lives in. And we are seeking to subdivide this property to add two additional lots. Lot number one will be roughly 62 acres. And then the lot number three will be 4.5 acres. That will be the smallest of the lots. And then 7-acre tract will be lot number two. There will be a road constructed. Currently, there is a road into the proposed area now that serves Mr. Bristol's home that enters off of 1100 East. That road will continue, but it will continue on back to serve the other two lots that will be on the northern part of the particular subdivision as shown on the plat. Thank you for allowing us the time to work through this with the Board of Zoning Appeals and staff. We had a number of issues that had to be resolved, had to be looked at, had to be examined, and ultimately we received a Board of Zoning Appeals approval with the help of staff. We are here tonight. One of the major concerns that was raised at the Board of Zoning Appeals, and in fact was a condition of their approval, is that the road be installed according to the standards required by the Zionsville Fire Department. It's going to be quite a long road. And so there was concern about whether or not it would be a gravel road and how it would be constructed and a number of other things. And in essence, we have worked through those particular concerns with the fire department, and those have been embodied in some commitments that are in front of you tonight. We had proposed a number of things to the fire department, and staff had requested that we propose how the road was going to be done so that they could vet it, take a look at it. And in addition, staff and engineering and Zionsville Fire came back with two additional requirements. And two additional requirements. And actually a third when you looked at the fire department request. And I'm going to go ahead and point those out specifically in the covenants to you. The engineering suggested that the removal of any soft yielding or otherwise unsuitable soils and soft grade will be replaced in compacted granular material during construction. That was a specific request that they made. We put that in our commitment verbatim. In the interim, after Board of Zoning Appeals approval, we were able to work with the gentleman who was putting in the road. So we were able to get all of this information from him, and then he was able to take a look at it and make sure that this would that this was workable from our standpoint and cost standpoint as well. The other requirement by engineering was adequate drainage culverts will be installed to facilitate drainage and to prevent the road from being saturated or washed out during rain events and wet conditions. Also, there's some properties to our immediate west, and I think one of the gentlemen had raised concerns to make sure this road was not going to in any way hamper any of the drainage in the area, and we've looked at that fairly extensively, and we'll have appropriate culverts and those types of things to make sure that the drainage keeps the not only the road safe and free of water, but also can accommodate any runoff that we're getting from our neighbors to the west. And the third request, and this comes specifically from the Zionsville Fire Department, who approved our initial request and our timeline on that, is that once the ground phase has been completed and prior to paving, Zionsville Fire Department shall require a proof roll to accept for paving. And they want to make sure that before we put any paving on there, this thing has a workable base to it. And quite frankly, that goes into our request to have this timed over a period of years. We want to install the roadway. And we've made a request and put in our commitments that we will not have the final 3-inch coat of paving put on this particular road until at least the second house that would be built back there. Remember, there's already one, so there's 2 lots that are going to be built on. The second house, before it receive a certificate of occupancy, that paving has to be in. That's a substantial investment. That's an expensive lot. The house is going to be probably seven-figure sum with regard to the house back there. So not being able to have a certificate of occupancy is I think a very large carrot and stick situation for that. So they were all okay with the timing of that. That will also give us an opportunity to make sure that the road is in appropriate form before we put our 3 inches of asphalt, so that, you know, generally 2 inches is more of a residential use. 3 inches is more of a commercial use that they would normally put in if you're going to have heavy equipment, or in this case, the potential for fire apparatus. And so we went with the larger thickness of paving, and that seemed to work for staff and Zionsville Fire, as well as the engineering department. So we hope we've lived up to the requirements that the Board of Zoning Appeals put on us, that we get those approvals and make sure that they're done well ahead and in conjunction with our submission for the plat for this plan commission. As I mentioned, in addition, there are two minor plat waivers, the length of the cul-de-sac. I think that seems to be a more reasonable situation now that we're going to have an appropriate road. You should also know that on the plat, and as we admitted, we've got a turnaround there for fire. They've required that. We've actually shown that on the plat. In addition, there's an entire maintenance responsibility for the road, including keeping it clear of snow and ice and those types of things, as well as maintaining that road as part of the plat itself. We anticipated that these commitments in this form might be appropriate, even though we generally don't do them for minor plats, would be appropriate in this situation, given the fact that there's going to be timing placed on that road. We want to make sure that these written commitments with all the enforcement provisions are in place, given the timing of that final paving coat on the road. Be happy to answer any questions tonight that you have. I think staff report did a pretty good job of covering all of the particular issues, but happy to answer any questions that any members of the Plan Commission or public may have.
All right, thank you. At this point, is there anybody in the public who'd like to comment on this matter? There are none. Before we get started, we need a motion to accept first-class mail in lieu of registered for notice.
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
By nay. All right. At this point, take secretaries. Roger,
Thank
you
you.
good?
Mr. Andreoli summarized the project very well. I'd like to just clarify or add to one of the approvals, the approval that the Board of Zoning Appeals granted was special exception for residential use in an ag district. That was approved for the minor plat and all 3 lots, even though one of the homes is existing. We just wanted to memorialize that. And so that was the approval that the BZA provided. They did. There was great discussion about the construction of the proposed private drive going off of 1100 East back into the development. And that is where the want came for description of the construction methods and measures that were going to take place. Since the Board of Zoning Appeal hearing, petitioner did provide some details for consideration as to how the road would be constructed. That information was then provided to the town engineer and the fire department. Those 2 bodies came back with the 3 items that Mr. Andreoli has already noted. And that was provided back to Mr. Andreoli, and he has incorporated those into the draft set of commitments that are before you this evening. And again, just to reiterate, the 2 waivers that are being requested, one is for the length of the private drive. The maximum length permitted is 800 feet. This one from the intersection with 1100 East all the way back to its furthest point, which is the hammerhead turnaround that is designed, is about 1,550 feet. And the second waiver is for water facilities related to fire protection, as these sites will be on a well. It is typical for a minor plat like this to request that waiver. Staff is in support of both of the waivers and in support of the minor plat as presented. I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
All right, thank you. At this point in time, is there any questions, comments from any of the members of the Plan Commission?
Sure. So Roger, which town engineer approved the statement of commitments?
The town engineer received the letter that was presented, which included the basis for these commitments. They did not see this set of commitments. We received these this afternoon. What the town engineer received is exhibit number 9, which is in your packet, which is a letter from Mr. Andreoli, and then also a letter from the fire department.
Somebody else. I need to find letter 9.
Exhibit 9,
Exhibit 9.
down in the lower right-hand corner.
So the town engineer approved this?
Town engineer reviewed this and then added 2 more requirements to it. Those 2 additional requirements, along with requirement from the fire department, were then provided back to Mr. Andreoli. He incorporated those comments along with the information out of this Exhibit 9 letter, was incorporated into the draft commitments that are before you this evening.
At the BZA, what we discussed as part of the approval that we provided was that the construction of the drive would support the fire department's equipment. To say that we have a town engineer that would approve this letter is disappointing. It's a polite way of putting it. What I fully expected to see come back out of Mr. Andreoli and the Bristols was some sort of civil engineer design spec for the road they were putting in. I've probably only built 10 miles of road in my career, but the first mile is the same as the thousands in terms of what a road is supposed to be made of when it comes to the stone base, the top coats, the binder, the finish coats, some sort of drainage. And it's all based on a civil engineered set of drawings that actually provide that whatever is being put in is not being put in down the bottom of a swamp. I'm also amazed that someone within the fire department is going to actually go out and review a proof roll. As much as I respect our fire department, I hope they spend their time on training to save our lives and save theirs. I don't expect them to have any understanding what a proof roll is. My entire, thought of this process is we provided Mr. Bristol and Mr. Andreoli an opportunity to actually come back with some sort of specification and commitments that would not put the entire burden back on the town of Zionsville, and now the fire marshal is involved in this, of what is considered an actual serviceable road. And you haven't done it. Secondly, as I'm going back through when it comes to the findings, they haven't met the requirements of the findings. The fact that it's expensive to access property off of 32 is not really a concern of the Plan Commission. The highest and best use of this property may just be that, farmland. And Mr. Bristol's had the opportunity to put a house on it. But when it comes to subdividing it to put additional lots on and developing the property, we believe he ought to follow the same rules that every other real estate developer does when it comes to providing a road that will service both the fire department, the trash trucks, the water trucks, whatever equipment. And what we're being provided does not pass. And once again, a statement of commitment says you're going to put in some stone and some pavement, and then you're only really going to put in the stone after you've done some work on top of the road. I could go on, but no.
Would you like me to respond?
Sure.
First of all, we were requested to go ahead and make sure that the road complied with the requirements of the Zionsville Fire Department. That was the request that was made.
Now, the request with that it would
Excuse me,
support.
you've had the floor. Let me
All right.
please respond to your question, if I might.
Please.
And that was the request that was made. Staff had suggested we need to propose depth of the road, stone of the road, those particular requirements back to the town so that the fire department could take a look at it and engineering could take a look at it as well. So we talked to the gentleman who would be installing the road. He knew it was going to be a private drive. This is not a road that's going to be dedicated like you would see in a normal larger subdivision or something along that line. This is a private drive. Notwithstanding all of that, we understood the private drive had to pass muster with the fire department to make sure fire apparatus could get back there. So in essence, we went ahead and proposed what we have here in our statement of commitments, that the road will be 22 feet wide. Remember, our access is 36 feet, but the road will be 22 feet wide, 1 foot on either side of the roadway. 20 feet of it will be paved. How they were going to strip it down to clay and what they were going to do, and then the additional information that was requested by engineering was put in our commitments. In addition, phase 1 will consist of number 4 stone, or 4 inches of number 2 stone, rolled in, not poured, and that is a specific road engineering requirement. Phase 2 will then consist of 4 inches of number 53 stone, which will be rolled in, not poured. This is not a typical drive that somebody's putting back to their house. These specifics have actually been given some thought based upon the fact that they had to pass muster with the fire department and engineering. Adequate grading, drainage, culverts will be installed to facilitate drainage. That's what they required, and we put that in. And we have to do a proof roll. And the asphalt will be 3 inches at the time that it's done. I'm not sure what additional information I can provide or need to provide, other than have my client go to the cost of having a civil engineer prepare something that says exactly what I just said. So I'm sorry, Mr. Jones, I categorically disagree with how you suggested that. I'm only responding to what was required by the Board of Zoning Appeals. We've worked with staff to try to get this done. We've got it submitted to the fire department, we've got it submitted to engineering. I'm just not exactly sure what else I need to do in order for them to give us approval that they've already given us.
My request then would be continue this until Mr. Andreoli can bring back a stamped set of drawings from a licensed civil engineer that says that this description of activities will result in a drive that can support an 80,000-pound fire truck.
Is there a reason that the town of Zionsville engages an engineering firm to review information in order to give feedback to applicants? Because we provided that, they had an opportunity to look at it. And they provided comments and additional suggestions back that ought to be incorporated, and we incorporated them verbatim, didn't change any wording. So if that's the sense of the plan commission, I guess we're gonna have to do it. It just costs my client more money to do it. And we've got another 800-foot requirement later tonight. I want to hear how the plan commission addresses that, whether you need an engineering study for that one as well.
Roger, as town engineer, have they reviewed and commented on this? What's been provided?
The draft that was received this afternoon, they have not seen this. But I've gone through the language of this draft that has been presented, and it matches up exactly with the comments they did provide. So they have not seen this specific draft, but they did see the letter that was included as Exhibit 9 and commented upon it. Their comments have been incorporated into this draft set of commitments.
Mr. President, so you know, that I just went ahead and did the actual commitments today and put them in commitment form. I could have just listed them, or I could have just used what staff has done as the various letters. I wanted you to see that we had put it in commitment form so that it was part of your approval process, knowing that it would be submitted on the forms normally approved by you in terms of written commitments that go with approval. So that's the reason I did it. The language has not changed other than add the additional language that was required, so it's all in one form. That's all we did.
Was the staff engineer given any information that the reason this information being provided to him because it was part of a Board of Zoning Appeals approval?
Yes.
That there were certain commitments that we wanted of them?
They had also been provided the original documentation from the fire department, which was presented and discussed back during the Board of Zoning Appeals process. So they were given that history as part, along with the letter that Mr. Andreoli had submitted to review. And the two bodies, the fire department and the town engineer, came back with 3 additional requests. Those 3 requests have been incorporated into the draft commitments.
And then how often does the Zionsville Fire Department go out and review proof rolls?
I have no idea.
Actually, I have a member of the fire department here somewhere. Sir, do you have a minute?
State your name, address, please.
My name is Steve Hayes. I'm not a Zionsville resident. I'm a resident in Avon. But I am a lieutenant on Zionsville Fire Department, work out of Station 91 here across from Boone Village.
So on Avon, how often do you go out while they are developing subdivisions and do a proof roll?
I cannot answer that because I am not a developer nor a builder. And I can't even tell you what a proof roll should look like. So.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Anybody else?
Pardon? Out of the BZA, was there with the approval, how was the request written on what they would provide?
The issue is that in developing these lots, they do not have 45 feet of street frontage. So the zoning variance that was granted on the fact that they would then provide a drive that would meet the basis of a street, which is the over under we used on it was, would it support the weight of a fire truck or a garbage truck, or if they have a pool and they're getting water delivered, any vehicle, moving vans, etc. And what we expected, my expectation coming back was something along the lines that they were going to meet midway between actually coming in with a full-fledged street with curbs and under drains and stormwater drainage, and something that was better than a driveway. And so when I see something where they tell me that they're going to put down 4 inches of stone and then run over it to build housing, my 30+ years experience in development and construction means that that sub base is going to be junk by the time they put another coat of stone on top of it. Secondly, they're not providing any kind of engineering, that it isn't going to be sitting in the low areas, that it isn't going to, and once again, it's not going to end up being a town of Zionsville street they ever have to worry about. But we did request a certain standard, and the standard that got provided was the ability to support the weight of these vehicles, as well as provide the turnaround. And what I'm seeing falls far short of what we asked for. You had the opportunity to go a little above. My opinion, they went well below.
So being on BZA, I don't disagree with your thought on what we ask for. We ask for a drive, to call it that, that would support the weight of the heaviest apparatus that the fire department uses, and that they would get that approved by the fire department and engineering. We may not like the form in which it's in necessarily, that it's not an engineered set of drawings, but they've gotten the approvals that we asked them to get, which was the fire department signing off on it and engineering signing off on it.
But it's not fire department signing off on it we asked for. We asked for that it would support the equipment. I rewatched the video today just because as I saw this coming through. It's not the fire department's job to approve it.
But
It's the fire
engineering did.
department. And that's the most disappointing part of this whole thing. What can I say? The fact that our town engineer is saying this is an okay process kind of circumvents everything that every other developer has to come in front of us and do. It doesn't matter that it's only 2 houses or 100 houses. Same process, same standards.
Anybody else have any questions, comments? Mr. Andrew, I got a question for you.
Yes.
So the plan is to build this road essentially in sections. So build it up to where the first house will be built, and then when the second house is built, they'll complete the road out.
Oh, the road in essence will be built out the entire length. Even though the second house will come obviously after the first. I don't know whether lot 2 will sell or lot 3 will sell. My suspect is lot 2 will be the next one, and then lot 3, which is the farthest one away. The road itself will be installed, and the stone and subbase will be put in the entire length, including the turnaround. That will be done. The only limitation on final construction of the road is with the 3 inches of asphalt that will be installed to make sure that the road has worked effectively, the road is in good shape before we put asphalt on it, that the road appropriately holds the concrete vehicles, and all of the other things are going to go back to these houses in order to go ahead and build them. And coincidentally, and importantly for the Board of Zoning Appeals, to hold file apparatus as well. And so we're not trying to phase in the installation of the road. We want the road to be there. We want it to be used. We want it to work. We want it to make sure that if there's any areas of the road that need to be replaced before we put the final asphalt, I think, reading between the lines, that's why Zionsville Fire Department wants to make sure there's a proof roll before we put our paving on. And it makes sense. And we totally agree with that. It won't be Zionsville going out there and looking at it. The fire department, probably somebody from the engineering, from staff engineering will go out there and make sure that the proof roll is workable. If there's any areas we need to change or modify or dig up or supplant. The other thing that they had suggested, given the fact that part of this road has been in use for many, many years, the road that goes from 1100 back to where the drive turns down to Mr. Bristol's house has been in use for years and years and years. And that road has a very good base on it and substantial base. It's the road that will go back from that road back to the other two lots that require all of the work because of it'll have to be stripped down and clay. And that they had suggested in the commitments, and I thought it was a good suggestion. The road guy, when I talked to him about these, said he's going to do it anyway because that's how you have to construct these. But they had suggested that the removal of any soft yielding or otherwise unsuitable soils in the soft grade will be replaced with compacted granular material during construction. So obviously, if there's a requirement that at various stages of construction or before paving, we have to have somebody out there from town to look at it. I'll be happy to go ahead and not only say it's got to be proof roll, but we have to let the town know. Town has to inspect it. I don't have any problem with that. We're not trying to do a pig and a poke on this thing. There's just a process to it. And we thought we've complied, as Mr. Lake has said, with trying to make sure that the fire department is comfortable because they're the ones that have to have a fire apparatus back there potentially. But remember, we're going to have concrete trucks and we're going to have all kinds of manner of vehicles back on that road. The idea of not paving it for a while is to make sure we can have somebody look at it, inspect it, and make sure it's in good shape before we put a final coat of asphalt on it. So that's where we are. As I said, I'll be happy to change this language slightly to include with regard to shall require approval except for paving and put language in there with council and staff can look at that we must notify the town and we have an obligation to notify the town when we're ready to do the paving so the town can come out and inspect and make sure that there aren't any areas of the road that are deficient before we can put our final coat of asphalt on it. We're happy to go ahead and do that. It may be the nicest, when we're done, private road ever constructed in the county, quite frankly.
And just make sure you want the town engineer to come out and do all this free of charge, where the other developers pay fees to have this service provided. I said, I just want to confirm you and your client expect the town of Zionsville to provide this engineering review for free, where other developers, when they come before us, provide drawings and specs and pay fees to cover the cost of doing that.
Mr. Jones, you're not very familiar with the approval process in the town. The town doesn't do anything very much for free. If there's engineering services that are brought to bear, just as there is in this particular application, bills have already gone out. I don't know if they've been paid by Mr. Bristol, but they've gone out and staff will insist that they're paid. So no, I'm not asking it be done for free. In fact, as a practical matter, even if I asked, staff would tell me no. They don't have any authority to be able to say that we can do this for free. That's part of your fee arrangement, and that's part of your arrangement when you make application. So hopefully now that I've familiarized you with that, you'll understand that we're not going to be doing this for free. To the extent that there's engineering services or time involved for taking a look at this, I suspect we're going to be billed just like every other development client that I have.
Roger, is this correct?
Honestly, I need to defer to others regarding the permitting process. That's not an area that I am well versed in.
Okay, that's fine.
So,
Wayne?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump into that. I think what Mr. Jones is driving at is that as a minor plat, there is no development plan. Therefore, the mechanism, if you will, to drive that cost and that review simply generally isn't there. It is the minor plat, the subdivision documentation simply doesn't have that contextual content that would drive what Mr. Jones is getting at. But it's very good on this particular petition to have this in the record, that this will be something that is taken care of through our typical billing of of contractual services. We're also, transitioning away from town contractual services with a contracted engineer, and it's being conducted more and more through our town engineering staff, which we've been on staff for about since May. So almost kind of on a year here. So we look to have this fully converted, probably not by the time this road is built, but nonetheless, a good conversation to have on the record.
And just to complete the loop, typically when we're approving a minor plat, there's 45 feet of street frontage, whether that street already exists or the developer is building a street.
Correct. We have our ordinance requirements which specify the dimension that you mentioned, which is allowed to be reduced by certain language that's in the ordinance, yes.
But it's when it's facing a street. And in this case, what we're getting is a drive.
Yeah, this particular topic was covered at the Board of Zoning Appeals. The definition of street does cover private drives as an acceptable methodology to provide access.
Any further? There was no motion to continue this, or did you say, you didn't make an official motion on that, did you?
I would make the official motion if
I just was
So
wondering if
request.
there was a motion.
I will back up. My concern still is we do not see, even though I understand Mr. Kilmer has said that our town engineer has approved this set of commitments. My expectation was something a little more concrete, establishing, created by someone with a licensed civil engineering stamp in hand. So my request would be that we continue this. My motion would be that we continue this until Mr. Andreoli and his client, the Bristols, provide us a stamped drawing by a civil engineer establishing that the scope of work outlined in the attached commitments will effectively create the road or create a drive suitable, support the loads of the proposed equipment owned by the Zionsville Fire Department. And for that matter, we'll stop there.
All right, so we have a motion to continue this till next month. So the petitioner can provide what Mr. Jones is asking for. Is there a second on this one? Is there a second? Motion dies for lack of a second. I understand where you come from, Larry. I guess when I look at this, I would, there's two factors here. I think the town, I mean, as much as they can require them to, complete this in this manner, I think they'll do their best to do that. At the same time, I don't think the homeowner's going to want to put in a road that's going to fall apart so they can't get back there. I was looking at this and I'm sitting there thinking, this is better than the road that I've got in my subdivision. I'm pretty certain it is. So I'm comfortable. I guess if you were going to require that from them, should there have been a more specific request from the BZA?
The issue the BZA has is we can't really the only other option BZA had was to deny it. Instead, we opted to try to outline a path that the petitioner could move forward. Hence my concern that what we're getting isn't really effectively creating a document that any third party could review and enforce. And it just falls upon fire department or the engineer, whoever, and they effectively have no leverage to enforce. If it goes out and fails the proof roll, if they take a roller out there after the concrete trucks and everybody else has been running over this thing and start running it and it's pumping left and right, who knows what that is?
So,
And since they have to do not have, since they're not building a street, they don't have to provide a performance bond. Asphalt is just the umbrella for the stone and the drainage and the culverts and everything else put in when you do a road. Once the asphalt begins to fail and moisture gets underneath, the potholes are created in the stone. They aren't created in the asphalt. And
so Wayne, or any town planners, if this road would fail the fire department's inspection, is it a situation where the fire department said, we're just not going to provide them service? I mean, what happens if that is the case? Do you know?
Well, certainly the commitments are enforceable by any party. So I think you're asking if someone goes out there for the initial inspection and if there's a failure, I think the staff would push to see an installation, a remedy that would conform to the letter of the commitments. I think I'm taking your question a little bit forward. Maybe it's not directly what you're asking. Is what if 7 years in the future, if there are the potholes, the failure of the asphalt, these commitments are executable in perpetuity. So in theory, if there was a failure, anybody who, and certainly Mr. Taylor can provide additional color to this, but certainly any party that is entitled to enforce these commitments could in essence make mandates, including the town or any party that is entitled to enforce these commitments in perpetuity.
Yeah, if you look at the form commitments, you'll note that the commitments are enforceable by the town and the planning staff and the plan commission themselves. The statute on this actually provides any number of remedies for the enforcement of commitments and any other conditions that are imposed as part of the zoning approval. So in general, this is how the town protects itself on the enforcement side, is through the standard written commitments.
All right.
If we make a motion to approve this, do we need to amend the motion we have to include your review of the commitments provided tonight?
You may, as a matter of course, I review all the commitments anyway, as a matter of course, but I think what's really important is that the commitments be part of any approval.
Okay.
Some people say subject to review by staff and council, something like that.
Okay. Mr. Anderoli.
Yeah, since other than Mr. Jones, I sense the concerns are to make sure that this road is going to be a workable road when we put it in, and it is what we say it's going to be. And so I don't have any problem if I can work with staff and council to add language with regard to the fact that in additional proof roll, we add language in there that it's our affirmative obligation to contact the town and have the town review the road and look at the road. And if there's any engineering costs incurred by the town for us to do that, we would be responsible for paying that. We're not trying to get out of that. We just want to find a way that we can get the town out there, make sure that road is working before we put an expensive layer of 3 inches of asphalt on it. That if there's any areas to repair, we need to repair that. I'll be happy to bolster that language with council to take a look at it and staff to make sure that it's our affirmative duty, not the town's responsibility to wonder whether it's done. It's our duty. And remember, unless that's done to the town's satisfaction, we don't get a certificate of occupancy for one of the 2 lots that we've decided to sell and the family and build on. So there's a tremendous incentive on our part to get it right and make sure the town understands it right. And I'll be happy to add that language in there. I didn't anticipate that was going to be concerned, but I understand why it would be, and I can add that language to put the burden on us to do it. So the town doesn't have to, with all the myriad of things they have to do, worry about this situation. We can let them know.
All right, thank you. Is there any further questions, comments? Wayne, did you want to comment?
Certainly cannot resist the opportunity, since we talked about the certificate of occupancy process. Many times we see homes that are finished in December. Asphalt plants are not furnishing asphalt, sometimes in December. So certainly we would encourage, if there's going to be an adjustment to this set of commitments, that certainly temporary certificate of occupancy be referenced as a permissible instrument that the staff could issue to the new owner, but that a final C of O would not be issued until the requirements are met. Again, these are tricky times where we again see properties that are finished and ready for occupancy for maybe the holidays that are at the end of the year, and a closed asphalt plant might cause some challenges.
Yep. All right, thank you.
I guess my final piece too is just going back to a review of the answers provided with the findings. Number one, it says that, the road is being constructed in accordance with the street standards approved by the Zionsville Fire Department. Did not know that street standards needed to be approved with the fire department. If this is something we're going to make going forward, just want to make sure everybody aware of it. Same thing, the rest of them are all just, the Bristol zone of property that was purchased and it was zoned agricultural. They're trying to redevelop as a housing subdivision. And most of the findings all involve the simple fact that to do it correctly without the requested waivers is just a financial imposition. So if we're going to begin granting waivers based on just the financial wherewithal of the client or the developer, just be so noticed.
No, I think we're okay. Is there any other questions, comments? If not, is there a motion?
I move that the waiver for the length of a cul-de-sac to exceed 800 feet be approved based on the findings included in the staff report, Exhibit 10A, as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Janice, would you please take roll?
Mr. Franz,
Aye.
Mrs. Grabanowski,
Aye.
Mr. Jones,
Hey,
Mrs. Walker,
Aye.
Mr. Lake,
Aye.
Ms. Madrick,
Aye.
That motion carries 5-1. It's approved.
I move that the waiver for water facilities for fire protection be approved based on the findings included in the staff report, Exhibit 10B, as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Janice?
Mr. Franz,
Aye.
Mrs. Grabanowski,
Aye.
Mr. Jones,
hey,
Mrs. Walker,
Aye.
Mr. Lake,
Aye.
Ms. Madrick,
Aye.
That waiver is approved 5-1.
I move that docket number 2021-53-MP, approval of a minor plat for a 3-lot residential subdivision located at approximately 415 North County Road, 1100 East, Zionsville, Indiana, be approved based on the findings in the staff report, staff recommendations, submitted findings of fact as presented, and number 1, subject to resolution to engineering and Boone County Highway comments, Exhibit 8. Number 2, compliance with the petitioner's commitments and fire department's requirements for the construction of a private drive, Exhibit 9. Number 3, construction of a private drive will include the removal of any soft yielding or otherwise unsuitable soils in the subgrade and replaced with compacted granular material during construction, and that adequate grading drainage culverts be installed to prevent the road from becoming saturated or washing out during rain events and wet conditions. 4, be inspected and approved by the town engineer before issuing a final certificate of occupancy. for either lots 2 and or 3. And 5, include the commitments presented by Mr. Andreoli, subject to review by planning staff and council.
Second,
Hold on. So before you get a second, would you want to add the temporary occupancy language?
We can, I'm not quite sure where it will be added because we've stated that they can't get their final until the final approval. So.
Do you think final occupancy is good enough in that one then? Or should we give them an opportunity to still provide a temporary?
I think you should just say what you mean. I think Wayne should probably weigh in on that. I think it's just important to say what you actually mean.
And that's why I use the word final.
Yeah, if it needs more detail, then give it more detail. But
Would you add,
I'm amenable to adding.
if in the case,
Yeah, so to number 4, we could add, if either the homes on lots 2 or 3 are finished during the winter and final paving is not able to be completed, that they be given a temporary certificate of occupancy until such time as the paving can be completed and approved by a town engineer for final certificate of occupancy.
why don't we just add as provided for in the town ordinances.
So amenable.
The procedure is in there. So
okay.
Okay.
All right, now I'll take a second.
second,
Any further discussion? Janice?
Mr. France,
Aye.
Mrs. Grabowski,
aye.
Mr. Jones,
Nay.
Mrs. Walker,
Aye.
Mr. Lake,
Aye.
Ms. Madrick,
Aye.
That motion is approved 5-1. Thank you.
I'll work with staff, council, and
All right, thanks, sir. Next item on the docket, 2021-68Z, Town of Zionsville, 5929 South 700 East, Whitestown, Indiana. Petition for zone map change to rezone 2.25 acres plus or minus from the R1 Rural Single Family Residential Zoning District to the R2 Rural Single Family and 2-Family Residential Zoning District. Wayne, you're presenting for the town on this one, I believe.
Good evening, Wayne DeLong, Director of Community and Economic Development, Town of Zionsville. Certainly a pleasure to speak to you this evening related to this matter, as mentioned, 2021 68Z. This is a request of the town to rezone 2.25 acres on 700 East from the R1 classification to the R2 classification. Certainly the staff report, the Zoom link that was in your transmittal pack of information certainly speaks to the concept of potentially transferring this property to a nonprofit entity for their use. Certainly the petition that is in front of you stands aside of that request of who that end user or what that end user or the occupancy would be. Certainly what staff is poised to speak to and is as reviewed in the staff report is the concept of the reason request. We certainly don't want to overlook how we got here. Certainly as staff is moving through talking with administration regarding the inventory of properties that are owned by the town of Zionsville, there is an emphasis to evaluate the highest and best use of all real estate holdings within the town. Certainly this piece of property is a piece that the town acquired some years ago for a right-of-way project, for a pathways project, and ultimately it made more sense to acquire the entire acreage for our project. Parallel to that conversation, Habitat for Humanity expressed interest to the town regarding the possibility of, is there any acreage that you are aware of, town of Zionsville, 67 square miles of community, as to what might fit their mission? And certainly this property did pop up on our radar as a discussion point. Certainly began those conversations internally. The group did approach the town council for a conversation related to the concept. Certainly Habitat for Humanity is in the audience, I believe, and certainly could speak to these topics if you so desire to hear additional information on that. And certainly from there, after that presentation, staff, I had a conversation with town council leadership about the concept of filing a rezoning to potentially provide additional yield out of this property. R1 classification limits 1.75 units an acre. R2 classification would provide a bit more density. Certainly, the yield for any end user would seek that type of additional density. And certainly just the mere act of rezoning the property adds additional value, regardless of who that end user or owner is. So that just is a quick narrative of how we got to this point today. Certainly the petition, again, staff approaches this on its face related to the rezoning request. Your 5 statutory points that are outlined in the staff report, paying reasonable regard to the comprehensive plan. And this area is comprised of a mix of uses: service, school, fire department, residential, 2-family, multifamily, a little bit down the road, boys and girls clubs. This is a very unique area of town. Certainly this parcel has a standalone single family use, is a bit underserving for the area. Certainly could yield a bit more density. And certainly that's what's on the agenda for this evening. And staff has formulated its review and it comes to you with a favorable recommendation. And certainly Janice with our office can speak to you related to the staff report. Happy to answer your questions related to the filing.
All right, thank you, Wayne.
Certainly.
Do you know how the neighbors, adjacent property owners were noticed?
Everybody was noticed first-class mail. Certainly we would, the staff would ask for a waiver of the standard and the rules, but certainly we published notice, I want to say back on January 6th, I believe, related to the matter.
We still need a waiver on the first class. So is there a motion to accept first class mail as notice, appropriate notice?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay? All right. At this point in time, is there any comments from the public on this matter?
Thank you, President Franz. Again, my name is Steve Hayes. I want to thank you for the opportunity to stand and offer some comments on this particular item. Again, for the record, my name is Steve Hayes. I am the president of the Boone County Professional Firefighters Association, who is the recognized representative of our Zionsville firefighters. I just wanted to speak a little bit about this, and I use opposition lightly in this particular situation. But this property located at 5929 South County Road 700 East and next door to our Zionsville Fire Department Station 93, I believe was purchased in 2016. Wayne might be able to help me with confirming that. Since that initial purchase, Zionsville Fire Department has had the opportunity to use the current structure on this property for training. This property is the only location within the town of Zionsville that offers a structure for our firefighters to perform all types of fireground training, except with the exception of live fire. In 2021 alone, and of course, as you know, in the midst of a pandemic, our Zionsville firefighters completed 782 hours of training at that location, all while having a portion of that year keeping us at our own stations to perform training as we had our fire stations locked down for a certain amount of the year. We also have the opportunity, as many of you know, we have a Boone County training tower up in Lebanon next to the sheriff's office that allows us also an opportunity to train within a structure and also use live fire in those training scenarios. However, with that property being in Lebanon, it creates a little more time for us to be out of service, to be able to travel to Lebanon with our apparatus and our crews to train and then return back to our districts where we can get back in service to serve the community. And I will just say as well that, you know, I realize this petition allows for a great opportunity for an outstanding organization such as Habitat for Humanity to provide housing for the less fortunate. And I do want to make the statement that we fully believe in what this organization does, and certainly mean no disrespect by sharing these comments and expressing our concerns about the opportunity to train as firefighters. And I will also say that, in fact, we've had Zionsville Fire Department members that have said, should we lose this property for our training house, we want to find out what we can do to offer our assistance to help build. So we do very much believe in what this organization does and would proudly offer to donate time to help them with their cause. However, we do just have some concerns about losing an opportunity to train. I'd be happy to, if there's any questions or comments from the commission, I'd be happy to try to answer.
Thanks. I mean, it's interesting because this is not, what we're doing tonight really, it ends up helping that situation, but it's not, I mean, it can be done completely standalone from that.
Sure.
It's really a separate action that, I mean, are, really not concerned, I guess, how this ends up. If this came to us, that was just another piece of property asking for the same thing. I mean, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I completely understand. And I realize this really wasn't the particular board or commission to stand in front of and express these concerns. However, the recent November 15th town council meeting, I was actually on duty that day and wasn't here to hear the presentation. I did go back and review, but we felt that there was not adequate information able to be shared at that time to express our concerns about a piece of property to be able to train. So I felt like it was important that we at least made some comments this evening.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there anybody else who'd like to comment?
Hello, I'm Liz Qua. I'm Executive Director of Habitat for Humanity of Boone County, and this is Stacy Snively. She's one of my board members. We've got lots of board members sitting over here. I completely respect what you say about the training. We've actually worked with the Lebanon Fire Department, who we had a house and they trained in it. There was a limited amount of time they could use the house, it seemed like, and then they gave it back to us so we could tear it down. But totally understand. I mean, got to work in partnership with that. So Habitat in Boone County, we've never built in Zionsville before. We've been around since 1984. We built 67th home this year, and we have no land for this year. I mean, everybody knows that the cost of lands are crazy high, and so this is an opportunity for us to continue what we do. There's such a need in our county, and we're just excited about this possible opportunity. And I understand that there's other opportunities as well, but we would be incredibly grateful if this was something that worked out for us. Did you want to add anything?
I mean, I guess if we're only looking at zoning, I don't know how much to share as far as like our cause and all of that. I guess the only disappointing part is that like it's all within the town, and if it's something that is used by the town, that we wouldn't have obviously pursued something that we thought the town was using. So,
well, I mean, it's my understanding is the town, we're looking at subdividing this
exactly
piece of property.
Yeah, and maybe there's a possibility for us to just have a portion of the land if they want the house.
Well, I mean, this is not,
or
this isn't
irrelevant
us.
to that.
It's not us. I mean,
right.
At some point in time, I guess the town council vote to donate. So I think at that point in time, that's the appropriate time to talk to them.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Is there anybody else? If there's none, Roger, Janice.
Comprehensive plan recommends medium density residential, which is characterized by smaller lot subdivisions such as 1 to 3 dwelling units per acre, with a small area of the parcel recommended as agricultural. The rezone to an R2 zoning would allow for the parcel to be subdivided, if desired, into up to a 3-lot subdivision, as opposed to 2 in the R1 zoning and potentially just 1 lot when the required dedication of right-of-way is considered. In staff's transmittal to Plan Commission members, we provided the link to the November 15, 2021 Town Council meeting in which Habitat for Humanity presented a request for land in Zionsville. Regardless of potentially donating the land, staff finds to rezone from R1 to R2 an appropriate action for the highest and best land use of the parcel, compatible with comp plan as well as surrounding uses. If the rezone is given a favorable recommendation tonight, the request would then be provided to the town council for formal consideration. Staff supports a favorable recommendation to the town council.
All right, thank you. At this point, is there any, I'll open up to any members of the Plan Commission?
I would just reiterate that, while Habitat is a great organization, we're not here voting on that this evening. It is simply whether or not there is a better use for this or if that use fits in this area. And there is an opportunity for town council, I would assume, to not give all the property away. So both could coexist. It's not an either or. Something that we talked about earlier this evening that I would express concern with is that is a pathway for a lot of students in the middle school, going back and forth, and middle school age kids are curious, and that building is not very secured either. So there is some concern, I think, on my part, that we have a building that isn't very secure, that kids can get into and do things they maybe shouldn't be doing in that building. So, if we're going to continue to use it as a training facility, maybe finding a way to better secure that would be appropriate.
Any other comments?
Isn't there land on the Michigan Road Fire Department that they could do the excess training that they need to?
Do you have an answer?
I assume the question was concerning the Station 92 property on 421. Is that correct?
Yes,
Near
absolutely,
32.
yes.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm probably not in the position to be able to say yes or no for that question. That piece of ground is decent size, and there is some room next to the firehouse itself. We also have the property behind Station 91 that has been vacant for a long time as well. And I know there was some discussion amongst our fire department administration for years about possibly using that as a training facility. It's just that there's nothing currently that I'm aware of in the works to be able to facilitate training for us at another location. So that would be more of a question for fire department administration.
So there are no other structures currently for you to use?
Not that I'm aware of. No.
Okay.
No.
Thank you.
You bet.
And I guess I just challenge the statement that taking this 2.25 acres and dividing it up into 3 lots really is the highest and best use. Given the number of special uses that surround this property, both the Zionsville soccer fields, the high school, the fire department, the boys club. Yes, there's 2 residential homes straight across the street. My concern really is this rezoning a little bit cart before the horse, given the size of the parcel behind it. If the town of Zionsville is really looking to leverage the value out of this, might there not come better opportunities? We have an existing use that seems to be satisfactory to the town. It kind of comes across as the old Sitco, when we rezoned that property thinking we were making a step forward, and it's kind of hamstrung us ever since. So it's nice that we want to turn this into 3.75 acre lots, and that there is the potential that Habitat for Humanity may acquire these. But once again, is it really benefiting Habitat for Humanity to give them parcels of land that basically are 3/4 acre long, which
Yes, it is.
there's a certain expense in maintaining that. And, would they be better served with better parcels, better situated to the scale and scope of the product they provide?
Sure.
I agree, like with our type of homeowner, we don't necessarily need,
Name and address.
sorry, Stacy Snipely, and what else? Is that it? Correct. We don't really need that large of a property. And part of like the discussion we had is like, we don't need it to be that deep. We could, if the way that it's subdivided, I don't know if we have to, take on the entire, 2.2 acres, or if we could make them smaller, that's fine. It really comes down to the fact that we have 0 land. So any land to us is great land. We are not that picky. We literally have nowhere to build this year, the first time in 25 years. So it's more out of just complete like desperation for needing that land. And again, any land is good for us.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Any other questions, comments? If not, is there a motion?
I move that docket number 2021-68-Z rezone 2.25 acres plus or minus from R1 Rural Single Family Residential Zoning District to the R2 Rural Single Family and Two Family Residential Zoning District receive a favorable recommendation based upon the findings in the staff report and as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion on this one?
Once again, if Habitat for Humanity really does need property and there seems to be some excess the town has, you know, maybe a better plan would be to have a better plan.
Other comments?
I would say I don't disagree with that, but I think that's up to town council.
Well, once we're going, is we are going to hamstring the town council by rezoning the property without a plan to rezone to. This might be a perfect case for a PUD, special use for the fire department, and some smaller lots with a, since we're now approving a different type of street, servicing same. Better plan might fit everybody's needs better.
Again, Wayne, what was the genesis of this? I mean, how was this, what was started the ball rolling?
In terms of the filing,
Well, I mean, basically what drove the request?
so this filing is in front of you based upon the conversation of the presentation to the town council by Habitat for Humanity. Upon the conclusion of that conversation, staff approached leadership of town council, and I believe this parcel specifically was mentioned during that presentation, and certainly the town council, I think, was focused, at least maybe not during the meeting, but certainly subsequent conversations, maybe with one or two of the members, is talking about yield and value and what the fact that this parcel has one house on it, and is there potential to create more than one house, again matching up with the market that Habitat for Humanity strives for. And certainly staff, in concert with those thoughts, brought up the rezoning of the parcel to a classification that would support further subdivision. Now, certainly the yield could be up to 3 lots. How that's configured, different conversation. Certainly, will the parcels be as deep? Will some of that acreage be held back? Will maybe 3 lots be platted, but only 2 lots transferred, if there is even a transfer? So there's any number of concepts that are potential conversations launching from this first step, which is a recommendation to the town council, which can either affirm, reject your recommendation.
Well, and in the email we have in our packet from Mr. Plunkett, he even stated that this rezone could then allow them to sell multiple lots on the market and raise money for the town. So there's that possibility as well.
Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. Janice, would you please take roll?
Mr. Franz,
Aye.
Mrs. Grabanowski,
Aye.
Mr. Jones,
Nay.
Mrs. Walker,
Aye.
Mr. Lake,
Aye.
Ms. Madrick,
Aye.
Motion carries 5-1. This will be forwarded to the town council with a favorable recommendation. Next item on the docket, 2021-69 MP Everett Minor Plat, 4075 South 250 East, Lebanon, Indiana. Petition for minor plat approval for the establishment of a 3-lot residential minor plat with a request from section 193.056B4 water facilities of the subdivision control ordinance in the rural or AG Rural Agricultural Zoning District. Petitioner present.
Yes. So my name is Tyler Everett. I live at 5010 South 300 East Lebanon, Indiana, rural Zionsville. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start. So the reason we are here is my name is Tyler Everett. This is my wife, and that was my screaming 3-month-old baby in the hallway you've heard. That apparently that's what they do. I've learned in the last 3 months. So we are here to request to approve our minor plat so we can build a home on our family farm. So you can see our house and our grass is all grown in our field. So we request for a minor plat approval for an establishment of a 3-lot residential minor plat with a waiver request from section 193 of subdivision control ordinance of the rural agricultural zoning district. You can see on our map here, this is where our parcel is located for our plat. It's just west of 267 in the I. In 1920, my grandpa is the baby, and he just passed away this fall. And his grandfather, which would have been my great-great-grandfather, bought that farm. And so 101 years ago, we bought that farm. My family bought that farm. And in 1974, my grandpa and grandma bought that farm from his grandparents. And to this day, we've grown it in what we call rural Zionsville now. In 2003, my dad built a home. So after 1999, they split it once. They got their free split. And in 2014, we reorganized with Zionsville. Your staff report says 2010, so we just wanted to make the note that it was 2014 because there's the resolution of it. My dad he's the fire chief of the Perry Township Volunteer Fire Department. He sat at the Supreme Court for 3 days while they went to court and battled it all. So he's been through a lot of it. So as you can see, lot 1 is where my parents live. Lot 2 is where we'd like to build a house. And lot 3 is the remaining 81 acres of our family farm. So a couple weeks ago, we got our Board of Zoning Appeals, me and my child, my wife. And as you can see, this is our plat. So it shows lot 1, lot 2. It shows a county ditch. And per staff requirements, they wanted us to dedicate 5.1 acres, which is almost a little bit more than a mile of road frontage to the town of Zionsville. And just so you know, the property to the east of that was going for 50 to 80,000 an acre. So we gave you 5 acres. So we could build a home on 3 acres right there. Oh, so the arrow is pointing to a little itty bitty stretch of ground that we left on lot 3. And the reason that is like that, one of the members of the Board of Zoning Appeals asked that a couple weeks ago, is because of just family reasons and tax reasons. We decided to only build on what we had to have to make my home work. So we didn't want to take any more away from the farm than we had to. The other reason that the north has that long stretch like that is because there's a Vectron gas line that comes down 250 just to the end of our farm. And I was unofficially told by a gas crewman that they said if your property has gas in it, they'll bring it up to your house. So that's why we did the little strip. So that way we kept all the outside accessory structures on the farm parcel. And so that's like our farmer resolution to a problem. So this is all of our what's the word I'm looking for? Our plat. So we've submitted our petition, our waiver request papers. We've paid the required fees. We've dedicated 40 to 45 feet of right of way to the city of Zionsville, a mile of road frontage, 5.1 acres. Attended the TAC meeting in December, satisfied all points from the town staff, satisfied all points from consulting engineering, BZA approved special exception and the DSV, modified surveys to meet the staff approval, modified the minor plat to meet the staff approval, submitted the final documents to the ZPC meeting, and agreed to finalize the secondary plat for staff and BC highways recommendations. So the other day they sent us this. It's very small points, but the staff said they'd be fine with completing that in the secondary plat. We submitted our finding of facts. It met all the adequate depth sizes. This is more finding of facts that we submitted for the waiver. And so tonight we request that you move to approve the minor plat and waiver.
All right, thank you.
Do you have any questions?
Is there anybody in the public who'd like to comment on this matter? Nope. Janice, Roger, Janice?
Yes. As noted in the staff report, this petition did receive special exception approvals from the Board of Zoning Appeals to allow for the subdivision creation in the agricultural zoning district and to allow for the residential dwelling lot 2 to be built in the ag zoning district. The board also approved the establishment of the existing lot 1 to be less than 2 acres as required by ordinance. This petition requests establishment of a 3-lot subdivision with a waiver from section 193.056B of the subdivision control ordinance. The request for this waiver has been heard by the Plan Commission in petitions past, as parcels utilizing wells do not have the capacity water flow as required by the subdivision control ordinance as outlined in the staff report. Staff is supportive of the waiver request. Staff is also supportive of the request of the 3-lot subdivision, noting that both the town engineer and the Boone County Highway Department has offered comments as seen within the staff report to be clarified during the subsequent secondary plat process. Staff is supportive of both requests.
All right, thank you. At this point, is there any questions, comments from any members of the Plan Commission? If there are none, is there a motion?
We need to motion the waiver separate from the minor plat.
Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay, it just was combined on our document. So I move to approve the waiver request to utilize wells in lieu of a fire system.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Janice, roll please.
Mr. Franz?
Aye.
Mrs. Grabanowski? Mrs. Grabanowski?
Is she still on? All right, well, let's see if we need the,
I'll come back to her
Yeah.
at the end. Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mrs. Walker?
Aye.
Mr. Lake?
Aye.
Ms. Madrick?
Aye.
Mrs. Grabanowski? No.
all right, so she didn't vote, but there was 5 votes, so the motion, the waiver is approved.
So I move to approve docket number 2021-69-MP minor plat associated with the 3-lot plat located at 4075 South 250 East, Lebanon, Indiana, that be approved based on the findings of fact in the staff report as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Janice?
Mr. Franz?
Aye.
Mrs. Grabanowski? No. Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mrs. Walker?
Aye.
Mr. Lake?
Aye.
Ms. Madrick?
Aye.
Again, Ms. Grabanowski did not vote. It was a technical glitch, but you did receive 5 votes, so that matter passes also. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the docket is 2021-70 DPA, Christ Church, 600 North Ford Road, Zionsville, Indiana. Petition for development plan amendment to provide for the removal of existing accessory structure and the installation of a new accessory structure.
Good evening. Roger Burris, attorney at 410 West Oak Street in Zionsville. And I'm here on behalf of Christ Lutheran Church, located at 600 North Ford Road. I've appeared before this body several times on behalf of Christ Church because it's my church. I've been a member there since we started the church in 1984. And I think this may be the simplest item on your agenda tonight, so I'll try not to take too much of your time so you can all get home. We have a preschool and have had for many years. We have a fenced-in playground area behind the church, and we have a storage, a mini barn, a 6-foot by 8-foot mini barn behind the church. It's actually kind of in the parking lot. I think it'd be nice to show you a picture of it. So we have an existing mini barn, as you see here. Behind it is our trash dumpster, and then behind that is a single garage, a more permanent structure that is used for lawn mowers and outdoor equipment and so forth. But the little really crummy looking white shed that you see there is the one that we'd like to replace. We'd like to replace it with a similar structure, only a little bit larger. And we would use materials, and I submitted some sample materials from the shed company that we propose to use that shows that we would select the colors that would come close to matching the church colors as much as possible. So the church thought they could do this on their own, found out that no, they needed to run this by the Plan Commission, make sure that we were addressing anybody's concerns. So I've sent notice to the neighbors by first-class mail, published notice. I heard from one of the neighbors called me and I talked to her. She had some concerns that didn't really pertain to this, which I told her I would look into. There's, we're not changing any of the lighting or anything else. It's pretty much just replacing one shed with another. And the shed is used purely for storage of toys for our preschool kids that play out there occasionally. And our pastor would be very happy if this is approved because those toys are currently in the hallway of the church, and he's worried that somebody could have an accident there. I think that about wraps it up. Submitted findings that should be consistent. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I do have John Burkhardt as a member of our church. He's also here tonight. Also very involved in Habitat for Humanity, as my church is. So thank you for your consideration on that and your consideration of this matter tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we get going, do we have a motion to accept first-class mail for proper notice?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
All right. Any members from the public like to comment on this? There's none. Roger, Janice, Roger.
Thank you. Mr. Burris succinctly summarized the status of the project, and again, it's really a removal of an existing storage building, and they're wanting to replace it with a larger version of it nearby. Early on in the process of this project, we had the opportunity to run this past our building inspectors just to see what permits and things like that would be required. And they added, or they provided, and it was noted within the staff report that the structure would need to go on a foundation, and then also would require that the church secure an improvement location permit from the town prior to the installation of the building. Staff is in support of this proposal, and I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
All right, thank you. Is there any questions, comments from any of the members of the Plan Commission? If not, is there a motion?
Sure. I move the docket 2021-70 DPA Development Plan Amendment approval for the modification of an approved site plan for the removal of an existing storage shed and the place of a new shed be approved based on the findings in the staff report, staff recommendation, and submitted findings of fact as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Janice?
Mr. Franz,
Aye.
Mrs. Gravenoski,
Aye.
Mr. Jones,
Aye.
Mrs. Walker,
Aye.
Mr. Lake,
Aye.
Ms. Madrick,
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Next item on the docket is. where did that sheet go? Well, it's 2021-1104. I guess it's a Wayne.
Mr. President, if I may,
Okay, you're over
there's
there.
actually two items that we need to take a look
Right.
at. One of which was in your packet.
Yes,
And this is your legal representation contract.
I was gonna get
That would
to
be
it.
your first one.
I lost oh, here it is. No, I lost the agenda, so. But yeah. What about, what about the landscapes unlimited?
Yes,
Go
I
with
can
that
tell
one
you about
first.
that.
So,
Per section 194.127, procedures for submission and review of development plans. Minor amendments to development plans which have already received approval from the Plan Commission and which do not involve an increase in height, area, bulk, or intensity or type of land uses, the designation of additional land uses, the reduction in perimeter yards, the addition of driveways or access points, or reduction in the amount of parking for any use may be authorized by the building commissioner without a public hearing in its continuing administration of the development plan if, in the determination of the building commissioner, the requested minor amendments do not adversely impact the purpose or intent of the overall development. We are sharing with you the building commissioner's approval of the revision to the petition 2013-03-BP Landscapes Unlimited, which includes the removal of a door on the south elevation and the addition of 2 windows as reflected in the exhibit presented in your Plan Commission packets.
all right. Any questions, comments from any of the members of the Plan Commission? And then the last item on the docket is renewal of the current Plan Commission council. I think everything's pretty consistent with what's been in the prior years. Myself, I'm very satisfied with their representation. Anybody else have any comments?
I would agree.
Amen.
All right, so is our motion to renew the agreement with our current council?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, signify by aye.
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 Opposed by nay. Motion carries. Is there any other business? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We're adjourned. Wayne, is this execution copy or is this fine?
You would need to execute one copy.
Yeah, it's clean. I have an extra one, but that's
Okay.
as long as it's clean, yeah.